Okay, hello. Um, we're going to be painting that fountain. It was actually a photo I took on a workshop in Cortona, Italy. It was at the Villa Nobile in Cortona. Beautiful, beautiful setting. That was uh, the palazzo. I mean, we thought it was. It was just so beautiful um, in the country. So here we have. Now, what I'm doing is I'm painting the background because the picture was relatively dark in the background areas. What I wanted to try to do here is try to get this wash in as dark as possible so I wouldn't have to go back and restate it. So sometimes we get lucky and all the planets align and we can actually get the washes to go on as dark as we want them to and then dry as dark as they need to be. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm pulling a little bit of color out up top there just to show that there's a little bit of sunlight dappling through, and it's always good to show when you can in a painting maybe where the light source is coming from. In this painting, it's just the corner of the villa. All right, so this is, of course, a cypress tree. No respectable villa would be worth its salt without one, or millions. They just grow like pine trees grow in this country, so they're all over, and they're beautiful. So here, as you can see, I'm adding the wet into wet that you saw before. That mixture was a sap green, burnt umber, and I think there was a little bit of alizarin crimson in there, just a tiny bit. And the same thing goes with this wash. It's sap green. I think there's a little bit of cerulean blue and ultramarine blue. This blue that I'm putting in is actually the blue of the bluestone. Okay, so there's a little walkway and the path leads in there, and that patch of green was a small flower bed. Okay, that's to the picture right. So now I'm adding the first layer of green. Now people think, well, what is that? Is that grass? No, that was all algae. That year, 2019, was they experienced a heat wave there, and that day was somewhere around 97 degrees. So of course the algae content is going to pretty much go through the roof, and plus it wasn't running at that time. But the reflection, the way the light was dappling off parts of it, and the reflections, I thought were quite nice to paint. And so that green, obviously that's a little too green to be sap green, so that green I used was permanent green with a little bit of sap green just to sort of neutralize it. Permanent green out of the tube is almost like a juvenile green. It's like the green we think about, when we were children and we're grabbing a Crayola crayon. It's very bright, very primary. So here what I'm doing is I'm lifting up just a little bit of that wash back there just to open up that area, because I do want to have light coming through and hitting a little bit of the dirt back there in the flower bed. Now I'm creating the reflection. I probably picked up a little too much there of that reflection of the cypress tree. Now I'm just drying everything so I can apply another wash, and I think there's probably 3 or 4 washes, which was a little excessive. I think if you guys do this, try to do like one heavier wash. Be a little more bold. Um, I got it okay on the back, but not so much in the reflection. So if you guys want to go a little darker in the primary wash, do so, because it is a shadow and it is a reflection of a shadow shape, which would uh, just make it darker by nature. All right, so I'm adding a little brown. That brown was yellow ochre and burnt sienna. Now I turn it. Now, okay, so the reason why you're probably wondering, if you're new to watercolor, why you would turn a watercolor upside down and why would you paint it on an angle. Well, in watercolor, we can apply gravity to our work. The water is going to find its level. It's going to move as we move the paper. It's going to bead up like it's doing right there in the right-hand corner where I just went over with the brush. And what that does is it gives it more gradation. Okay, you can start it thin or thick, and kind of as you move the brush out or downward, use less pigment and more water, and that's how you can guarantee a successful gradation. Okay, if you want to grade, you just continue to use the same color. Make sure you mix enough to go through every area that you want covered. You do not want to find yourself out of paint, or else, because you cannot mix. Once you mix another color, the previous layer has time to dry, or at least just to set up, and you'll never get a continual grade or gradation as well. So now I'm just adding some darks, and at some point, now that's pretty much cobalt blue and cerulean blue mixed together to create a shadow. Again, that shadow is from the cypress tree. All right, so I'm trying to make them a little organic too, so it doesn't look so perfect. I'll probably go over the shadow in the pool again later on in the painting. Okay, this painting is about 17 minutes. Obviously, it didn't take me 17 minutes. I sped everything up, so it's at quarter time. That's why I cannot move this fast, especially at my age. All right, so now I'm working on the fountain. All right, now John Singer Sargent had painted fountains, painted sculpture in the gardens of Florence and throughout Europe with watercolor. And I remember seeing one painting he had done, and I just loved it. And I thought this was sort of reminiscent of, and sort of, giving Sargent his props and kind of honoring him with this painting. Okay, in Italy, unfortunately I didn't paint this in Italy. I painted this right here in my studio, but I did a painting of this, however, in of the opposite side of the of that same fountain area. Okay, so I'm using, you would think, well, they're unconventional colors. Like, that doesn't look like it's cement. Well, what's happening is they're picking up colors from reflections now, where there's water reflecting up into the bases of the bowls of the fountain. I'm adding some blue to indicate some shadow, just to mix it up. I mean, don't think that you have to do this whole thing, or try not to paint everything in one color. The whole idea of painting outdoors is the fact that we can see and record so many reflective colors. That's why Sargent loved plein air painting. So did Monet, for that matter. And they painted in every lighting situation. Paint in bright sun, paint in evening sky, paint and on a cloudy day, and you'll find that they're all distinctly different. And the way the shadows occur, the way the colors react to the lighting situations. Okay, so going back here, now I have a little 1/4 inch square brush, which I found pretty cool to paint those little doorways and the window treatments. Um, all you have to do is it's called chipping, where you're just using the block end, the wider end of the brush, and all you're doing is bringing everything downward and or to the side for a line. So it's a double duty type brush. You can do a fine line, or you can do a wide, well, as wide as the brush allows. That happened to be a 1/4 inch. They go from 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch to about 1 inch, all the way up to like 1.5 inches, if you wanted to paint that way. It's a great technique too. It's just using square brushes to do your paintings. Okay, so now again, we're going on to probably now this 3rd wash of the water. I'm really trying to capture some depth here. That's why I'm going over it. Now I went over it there. Probably go over it one more time too, which maybe I should have not painted the last one, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. What happened was the blue of the sky could have been a little bit bluer, so that could have been done prior to adding the green, where we would put a little bit more blue down first. But that's what happens when you trust that first wet wash. If it looks right, it's wrong, because we know that it's definitely going to get lighter as it dries. So we don't want that to happen here. We want it to be a little darker in the wet state, so that we know that when it dries, it will dry closer to the value that we really have in mind, or the value that is intended for that particular area of the painting. So now I'm just adding, basically right out of the tube or in my little boxes, straight permanent green. I think there's some yellow ochre, some cadmium yellow in there for the flowers. Okay, so here we go. So now we're almost at the end. You could definitely see that it's kind of coming together. I'm adding a little bit of white where I noticed that I did not work around that area. I think it bled in. So yeah, I did add white. It's okay if it's going to help the painting. You don't want to rely on it 100%, meaning you don't want your transparent watercolor to turn into a gouache painting. Nothing wrong with gouache paintings, but if we're intending to do transparent watercolor, we have to try to keep the majority of the painting transparent. And we're just putting these little embellishments in, because sometimes just water, again, does its thing. It runs in places where it shouldn't. And that's pretty much what happened in some of these areas too. But we're just trying to get a nice form. We still want to see some solidity. Now, as far as the reflection of the cypress tree right next to the to that pilaster there of the fountain, that base, that's something where you could leave out. One of my students said yesterday, because I showed this live without the narration, and he suggested that it might be nicer without it. So that's an aesthetic call. You don't necessarily have to paint everything that you see. If it's going to help the composition, leave it out by all means. So in this situation, I left it in. I think the reflection closer to the middle part of the base may have been a little darker in my second wash, but I never got back to doing that. So sometimes when you're doing these things, you got to kind of think about, okay, well, I'm going to do a trial run. Like this would be a trial run painting if it wasn't a demonstration. I usually just jump right in because sometimes I like to see what the accidents are going to do. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But in this situation and this whole painting, I just wanted to get the effect of light. Now, here I'm going back and I'm adding more cerulean blue, which is usually the blue that I like to use the cerulean blue when the skies are backlit. I don't know why. It just seems like when you look at that, I think what happens is the blues become warmer because there's so much sunlight behind the behind that sky, or we're looking into like that sun-drenched sky. So that would definitely warm up the blues in the sky. And cerulean blue is a warm blue. Okay, yes, there are warm and there are cool blues. Ultramarine happens to be more cool. Yeah, and here there's some little, I don't know, maybe little dead bugs, sitting on the top or whatever they are. Little glistening things. Here I just lifted off some of the paint just to show maybe there was a rogue cloud, passing by, or just sun glare, whatever it could be. Here, what I did now is I'm creating a feeling of light coming through. Now you see how bright that became. We're opening up that little corner, and we put a little glare in there just for effect. You don't have to do that. I mean, it is in the picture. If you reference the photograph from the beginning, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. And now I'm just restating the tree because I did basically painted it and just blew it out with the water. And yes, you can do that. And here's the unveiling, basically just taking off the tape just to see the picture with its edges there. And there you have it.